Scientists claim that they have discovered the genuine Noah's Ark, the very biblical ship that, according to legend, saved animals from the Great Flood. Today, we will reveal what was found inside the real Ark of Noah and what secrets it may unlock. This incredible discovery is capable of changing our understanding of archaeology and ancient history. According to the well-known biblical story, Noah built a gigantic floating temple in order to preserve selected forms of life during a catastrophic flood that covered the whole earth. In Scripture, this ship is known as Noah's Ark, a colossal vessel created according to a divine design. God himself told Noah the exact dimensions of the structure: 300 cubits in length, 50 in width, and 30 in height. If these measures are converted, that is approximately 137 meters in length and 23 meters in width. For comparison, longer than a football field, taller than Big Ben if you set it on its side, and heavier than any wooden frigate of the 19th century. Even modern wooden ships have been built only tiny in comparison with this colossus. Yet, despite these grand plans, many scholars doubt whether a wooden construction of such size could have endured the raging sea at all. The Bible states that Noah used a special material, gopher wood, possibly an already vanished species, and coated the hull with pitch to make it watertight. Believers assert that divine providence granted the ark miraculous strength. Skeptics, however, question whether such a giant could survive long at sea, even with contemporary technology. The Bible describes in detail that the interior of the ark was divided into 3 decks. These compartments allowed separation of cargo areas, living quarters for Noah's family, and pens for animals. Such a well-thought-out structure helped to organize an entire floating zoo for a lengthy voyage. But even with that division, caring for the animals would have been extremely difficult. Predators had to be isolated from herbivores, pregnant females monitored, and mountains of waste removed every day amid the rolling of the ship. Even modern zoos with veterinarians and communication systems face similar challenges. Imagine an ancient vessel without electricity, refrigerators, or medicines. Engineers suppose that the lowest deck served for storage and for the largest animals: elephants, rhinoceroses, hippopotamuses. The second deck was intended for calmer beasts and storage of provisions. The upper deck was set aside for people, birds, and the young. To cope with waste and feeding, crews would likely have worked round the clock, cleaning, distributing food, and watching over the health of thousands of creatures. By conservative calculations, Noah had to take on board more than 16,000 animals. Even modern zoos with logistics and transport barely handle such a number. It was necessary to watch for infections, isolate the sick, control parasites, and provide the proper diet for each pair. An elephant, for instance, needs more than 130 kilograms of fodder a day, while predators demanded meat. Birds required seeds and insects. All this had to be stored and issued without modern refrigeration. Crews on the ark probably rotated every 4 to 6 hours, cleaning and feeding the animals. Without a strict schedule, life aboard would have quickly descended into chaos. When the ark was loaded and all preparations completed, the moment of catastrophe arrived. According to the biblical account, the waters rose for 40 days and 40 nights without pause. The fountains of the deep burst forth, and the windows of heaven opened, pouring endless rains upon the earth. Navigation during this period was impossible. The ship was tossed over a boundless ocean without landmarks, among waves that hid even mountaintops. Afterward, for a further 5 months, the raging waters gave the ark no chance to reach land. In such conditions, the inhabitants of the ark had to adhere strictly to routine, regularly distribute supplies, check the animals' health, remove waste, and even calm frightened offspring. These mundane cares not only ensured physical survival, but also helped the people on board keep their sanity amid total isolation and constant danger. Today, many scientists question the possibility that such a ship ever existed. First, even the soundest wooden vessels seldom endure more than 10 years of service at sea without major repairs. Second, geological data do not confirm a global flood of the scale described in the Bible. For example, Mount Ararat, where according to the texts the ark is said to have come to rest, formed much later than the supposed time of the flood. Moreover, its peaks are still covered by many meter-thick layers of ice, which contradicts the idea that forests quickly arose here after the water subsided. Nevertheless, for believers, these objections are not decisive. They claim that the ark could have been preserved thanks to miraculous intervention. Numerous expeditions over the centuries have attempted to find the ark precisely on Ararat. The first serious source of such tales was the ancient Jewish historian Josephus Flavius, who asserted that the ark's remains lay in the Armenian mountains. With time, the interest only grew. In the 19th century, European travelers organized costly and dangerous expeditions, often with tragic results. The mountainous terrain and thin air were deadly. During the Cold War, reconnaissance aircraft photographs supposedly captured an anomalous shape on the summit glaciers resembling the silhouette of a ship. This sparked a new wave of enthusiasm, but the lack of modern ice drilling and penetrating radar prevented confirmation of those guesses. Today, the situation is even more complicated. International agreements restrict access to the region, and political instability and military conflicts make any serious research extremely risky. Sometimes, in the heat of excitement, outright frauds occurred. In 2008, a group of evangelical enthusiasts announced that they had discovered the real remnants of the Ark on Ararat. Yet a subsequent investigation showed that their evidence consisted of modern forgeries created to extract donations. Fake ancient beams and false expedition diaries deceived thousands of believers worldwide. Another example involves amateur researcher Ron Wyatt. He claimed that on the famous Turkish formation Durupınar, he had found the remains of stone anchors from the Ark. However, geologists later proved that these are natural formations shaped by lava flows and erosion, not the product of human activity. In the end, each fraud and speculation undermined trust in honest searches and only fueled greater skepticism in the scientific community. Not all research focuses on the summit of Ararat. Some scientists decided to set aside the biblical text and look at geology and archaeology without bias. In the late 20th century, investigators turned their attention to the Black Sea. Oceanographers found convincing signs of an ancient catastrophic inundation that occurred about 7,500 years ago. When the glaciers of the last ice age retreated, a gigantic freshwater lake was threatened. Waters of the Mediterranean rushed in, sharply raising the level and flooding vast coastal settlements. The renowned archaeologist Robert Ballard, who discovered the wreck of the Titanic, conducted underwater investigations and found ancient dwellings beneath a layer of marine silt. Analysis showed that these houses had been destroyed by a rapid and powerful flood. Genetic studies of marine organisms also indicate an abrupt mixing of saltwater and freshwater fauna precisely in that period. Although such a flood was not worldwide, it could have served as the basis for legends that spread throughout the region. These discoveries lend weight to the idea that the story of Noah might reflect a real calamity, albeit a local one. Such a catastrophic experience could have left an indelible mark on the memory of peoples. What is particularly interesting is that myths of a great flood are found all over the world. From the Sumerian epic of Gilgamesh, where a sage builds a giant ship by divine command, to the legends of ancient China and even the Aztec tales of a man who was told to build a boat and save all living things from a deluge. These parallels cannot be accidental. Researchers compare the details of the myths and find striking similarities. For instance, warnings from above, precise instructions for construction, and the division of animals into pairs. Such similar elements in legends separated by thousands of kilometers and centuries of history lead one to wonder whether beneath the layer of myth lies the memory of a genuine, though local, catastrophe. Special attention of historians and archaeologists is drawn to the earliest known written epic, that of Gilgamesh. It tells of Utnapishtim, to whom the god Enki revealed the coming destruction of humanity by a flood. Utnapishtim builds a gigantic ship, square, multi-deck, divided into compartments, to save his family and chosen animals. Rain pours for 6 days and 7 nights before the ship comes to rest on Mount Nisir. After the waters recede, he releases birds to scout, almost like Noah in the Bible. The coincidences are so exact, from construction instructions to the number of days and animals by pairs, that scholars deem it impossible to explain them by simple chance. Some studies even estimate the probability of accidental coincidence of key details as 1 in tens of billions. This testifies to direct cultural borrowing or a common source of these traditions, possibly a real catastrophic event that left an indelible mark in the collective memory of nations. Yet not only the Near East preserves such stories. From Polynesia to China, from India to Mesoamerica, almost every ancient people has its own version of a great inundation. The Aztecs spoke of a man whom the gods ordered to build a boat and gather into it everything necessary for life. In China, myths tell of a hero who held back the waters and saved the land from flooding. Even in Islamic tradition, the story of Noah is an important part of the sacred text. All these traditions share a common structure: a warning of impending disaster, the construction of a vessel, the salvation of the chosen, and the subsequent rebirth of life. For researchers, this points not so much to a literal worldwide flood as to a collective trauma of antiquity, a series of catastrophic deluges remembered and transmitted through generations in symbolic stories. But here is the question: do we have proof that Noah's Ark existed exactly as described in the Bible? Archaeologists who work with facts face serious difficulties. For example, even if ancient beams are found, wood analysis cannot confidently prove their connection with a specific vessel. Conditions on the summits of Ararat are extremely harsh. Multi-meter ice, lava flows, and earthquakes have repeatedly altered the relief over thousands of years. All this erodes or destroys any traces of ancient structures. Moreover, even the precise dimensions of the ark described in the Bible raise questions. Engineers note that a ship of such proportions would require incredible strength and maintenance to keep it from collapsing under its own weight. Modern steel vessels still need constant repair, while wood over time warps, rots, and loses water tightness. Even if one imagines timber with unusual properties, without regular upkeep, the ship would not survive a year in raging waters. Geology likewise does not support the idea of a global flood. Science finds no evidence of simultaneous and uniform inundation of all the Earth's land. Even the mountains mentioned as the Ark's resting place, according to dating, formed later than the supposed date of the flood. Furthermore, the hypothesis of a worldwide deluge poorly explains modern biodiversity. Biologists emphasize that even if the Ark carried one pair of every species, that number of individuals is far too small to preserve genetic diversity. For instance, it is impossible to explain how from a few beetles on the Ark came the tens of millions of species we observe today. That would require evolutionary changes at an incredible speed, far greater than we see in nature. All these factors increase skepticism in academic circles and force consideration of the story more as a symbolic parable than a literal narrative of events. Yet even skeptics admit that local catastrophic floods really could have inspired ancient myths. The most persuasive example is the Black Sea theory. Studies of the seabed have shown that about 7,500 years ago, the Mediterranean Sea broke through the Bosporus and rushed into a huge freshwater basin. The waters rose by dozens of meters in just a few months, drowning fertile lands and settlements. Archaeologists have found beneath marine silt the remains of dwellings dated to the time before the catastrophe. Genetic studies of marine life show a sharp mixing of species in the same period. This event was not a worldwide flood, but for the inhabitants of the region, it truly became the end of their known world. Such a disaster could have formed the basis for oral traditions that over time acquired a more dramatic and universal character. Historical memory and symbolism. This is one of the key arguments of proponents of a symbolic reading of the Bible. In their view, the ancient authors described not a specific global flood, but the collective memory of real disasters. They clothed it in vivid images, understandable and impressive to their contemporaries. Similar tales of divine wrath and cleansing through water are found worldwide. This points to a deep psychological need for people to explain natural disasters through moral meaning. Believers who insist on a literal reading perceive such conclusions as a threat to their faith. For them, Noah's Ark is not just a story, but evidence of God's care and justice. To refuse to take it literally means to doubt the sacred authority of the texts. Yet even many religious scholars acknowledge that biblical stories often contain elements of symbol and poetry, meant to convey to people not exact details, but great truths. Despite all doubts and scientific objections, attempts to find the Ark do not cease. Modern researchers use the most advanced methods: ice-penetrating radar, satellite imagery, topographic mapping, and analysis of magnetic anomalies. Yet even these technologies have not yielded convincing evidence. Access to the summits of Ararat is restricted by complex political conditions, the danger of hostilities, and strict permits. Expeditions require enormous resources and meticulous preparation. At the same time, scientific interest is fueled by the fact that even refutation of fantastic theories helps to study ancient cultures and landscapes. Even false finds or disappointments provide important data about how myths were formed and how people tried to reconcile faith with reality. Ultimately, the tale of Noah and his ark is more than an attempt to explain an ancient disaster. It is a myth that touches the deepest layers of human psychology. It speaks of the fear of nature's chaos and our vulnerability, of the desire to find protection and meaning amid destructive forces, of the hope for salvation and a new beginning even after the greatest tragedy. Such a myth not only survives the centuries, it shapes entire civilizations. For millions of believers, the Ark remains a symbol of God's love and justice. For historians and archaeologists, a mystery that demands respect and caution. And for all of us, a reminder of how fragile the world we build is, and how important it is to remember the lessons of the past, no matter how mythical they may seem. Perhaps Noah's Ark will remain a great enigma. It may repose beneath the eternal ice of Mount Ararat, or never have existed in the form in which the texts describe it. But one thing is certain: this story continues to live in people's hearts. Share in the comments what you think about this mystery. We will be very interested to know the opinion of every viewer. And right now, watch our previous episodes that have already appeared on your screen. Thank you for watching, and subscribe to the Top Facts channel.